back to Knots FM, everyone. This is going to be the third episode, but I'm recording it before the second episode because I am not very good at scheduling. This episode of Student Shoutout is with my good friend Natasha, or her Instagram handle is Rakodama. So she is an artist. She draws stuff. She's very good at it, but I'll let her introduce herself and explain her art. So Natasha, take it away.
Thanks, friend. Hi, I'm Natasha, or my handle is Rakodama. Don't ask me why. It just is. I guess I'm an artist. I'm trying to be, at least. Trying to find, a point where I can call myself one. I draw stuff, like Tristan mentioned, for fun and also for money occasionally. So just like most kids this age, just trying to make it work, figure out who I am with all that, and
her commissions are open, so that's just going to be like the first plug in a series of many plugs today.
Yes, give me your money, please.
Give her your money. So I thought it would be cool to invite Natasha on because recently I went to an art gallery that she invited me to, and some of her pieces were up there. So I guess we can just talk a little bit about that. Like, let's talk about the whole transition from being someone who scribbles on a notepad to commissioning stuff and making it to an art gallery. Let's just talk a little bit about that.
Okay. I'll start with commissions because that's what I'd done before, because this was my first showing, so not a lot of experience with that. But with commissions, I started when I was 15. Like, I was just in school, I saw the other like cool artists on Instagram do it. So I was like, oh, commissions are open, you guys, DM me, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So at first it was just, one friend being like, oh, can you draw this thing for my friend's birthday? Slow start, like in the first 3 years I offered commissions. I got a total of 3 commissions. Yep. So that's like one a year.
One a year.
Yeah.
Very good pacing,
Yeah, but I guess it's picked up since then. I started because now I'm sort of, people tend to commission me when they see I post a lot of stuff. When they see I do stuff, they're like, oh, I want the thing that you did for that other person. So I'm lucky that I've got supportive friends. So most, all of my follower base, all of my customer base are people I know. Which is good because it means that they're, they're loyal, they'll come back. It's easy to communicate with them. So yeah, I've recently, as you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I've recently opened commissions again. They're usually on and off based on like how busy I am, but because now, I'm not a student anymore, I'm working, I'm sort of trying to find a way to make that something sustainable financially. So yeah, commissions are open, but yeah, I'm still right now trying to navigate how I can do that. Not as like a broke student drawing manga, anime shit for people for fun, but more like as someone who can like show at galleries, who can get maybe like bigger commissions, commercial or something. So yeah, and as for the showing, like I only managed to get in because my dad was organizing it. But that's how it be in this country.
Nepotism is a really big thing in the art industry. You need to know the right people. So
it is.
Aside from this art gallery, like in the past, how much has nepotism helped you, or how much has knowing the right person helped you?
How much has nepotism helped you?
You can be completely honest. This is a show about transparency. Okay. And come on.
Yes. Okay. So nepotism. I can only speak for like in Malaysia, because I feel like we don't know any arts, or at least I don't know any artsy people how they do it outside of Malaysia. But I think because Malaysia is so small, like the artsy, not class, but like like
the community.
Yeah, the community is really tiny. You know this person, and then they know this person, and at the end of the day, everyone knows each other. Yeah. So I remember it, like at one point feeling bad, like, oh, all of my commissions are people they know. They feel obligated. They just want to like, oh, poor her. She opened commissions, gotta support, give her money because nobody else will. I was talking to 𝐏𝐨𝐿 of Senja, who will also be part of Student Shoutout.
I think so.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Maybe.
I was talking to her, being like, oh, I feel bad about my customer base just being people I know, and she said that, well, me too, haha. And which is funny because I consider her someone like super successful in what she does. Like, everybody knows her, she's super talented. And for her to say that also that she considered a lot of her base also people she knew, sort of like validated how much you can go off of just connections, you know what I mean? Like it's not necessarily, oh, you didn't earn it, because you know it's not like strangers, you know, commissioning you. Like like the community has to hold each other up, you know. So like, lack of a better word, it's nepotism, but at the end of the day it's like the community, you know, holding each other up. So
I mean, okay, I'll just rant on a little bit about my EP again. So when
self-indulgent,
I'm so self-indulgent. Holy fuck! But yeah, so basically, me putting out my EP on Bandcamp was like in a way very similar to like selling my art or like asking people to buy it, and all of the people who bought it were my friends, and I felt like shit because I'm like, damn, is anyone else actually liking my stuff, or my friends just being supportive? And there's always this feeling of insecurity like looming over you, like, am I good enough? And I think over time I've just kind of learned like some people are not really able to, you know, afford to, I mean, are not able to afford an EP on Bandcamp. So like there are people who I've met who, I mean, I've never met them in real life, but I've met them online and they enjoy my music quite a bit. And there's this
like
sense
me,
of,
I enjoy your music
so
quite a bit.
so there's this like community there. And I mean, the like you said, like the artist circle in Malaysia is really small, and I think if you go to like a few gigs, or like in your case, if you go to a few showings, everyone will know each other, you know. It's like I'll know like practically everyone in the music scene, I think, in like 5 years. Yeah. Because it's just the same people sharing like the same 5 ringgit to each other.
Just sending it back to you. And back to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I buy Harisha's stuff, he buys mine, so it's like we're just losing money on taxes, you know? So yeah, so since we're on the topic of like commissions and stuff, something that I struggled with a lot was finding like a price for my stuff. And yeah, so I guess this is kind of like 2 questions. How do you price your stuff, and do you struggle with valuing your stuff? Like, do you feel like you undervalue it a lot?
Yes. End of podcast. No. Yes, like actually that's a question I'm dealing with right now, because when I was in, you know, high school, pricing stuff to like broke ass teenage kids, like it was like, you know, like 5 ringgit for like a piece, but which was fine and all when you didn't need the money and stuff. But like now that I'm, you know, we're in adulthood or reaching adulthood, you know, and so, you know, I was like, oh, I had a, you know, these past few months I've been like sitting down like, oh, how much should I price my commissions at a rate at which I could probably do this full time? And so I reached out to some other people who kind of do this stuff, and one person said, you know, oh, you should price it according to minimum wage, how many hours and stuff. So I did that, and it was like, whereas I used to price a commission, oh, I'm like showing you with my hands, so like an A3 commission for those listening, like I used to price them at like about 40 ringgit, and then when I did the math, in order to like to make that on the minimum wage was like 800 ringgit, and I was like, ooh. Like, and like I would be happy pricing that, but would like the rest of the planet be happy to pay that, you know? Like, not like there's the thing of people not being able to afford it. Everybody we know is just, you know, first jobs and all. We're not like millionaires yet, you know? But like also, there's also the issue of like valuing art. Like, oh, you know, I could like, you know, get someone to do that for cheaper. I could get someone to do that for 100 ringgit. It's just a piece of paper, you know? Yeah, why does it have to, you know, can you give me that for like, you know? So, I don't know. I don't think the pricing question will ever be like solved for like any artist, I think. You know, it'll always be like a balance between how much you validate yourself and how much society validates you, and there's never going to be like a sync between that. So, yeah, I'm still at a point where I'm trying to find a place where I'm comfortable. Yeah, what about you with music? It's, you know, pricing music and all.
So in my head, I'm just always like, yeah, man, no one's gonna fucking listen to this. So I'm just like, my music isn't good, so I'm just gonna go and put it at like, I was thinking of putting my EP at like pay anything that, like name your price. So it's like, I'll just put it like a minimum of like $1 and you can just add on top. But then everyone's like, no, Tristan, you're undervaluing your art. Like you were like, no, Tristan, make it $5. I'm like, bro, 5 is like too much for just like a first EP. And I don't know, it's just really weird because you've been kind of looking at that piece of music or that piece of art for like months on end, right? Because you're working on it, and then it's like you don't see the value in it anymore. You just kind of say like, oh, this is this is fucking shit. Like, you know, like you get sick of it, and then at that point it's like you tend to undervalue it. That's something that I struggle with quite a lot. I also think that part of the perception for that comes from people around me. It's like, oh, bro, I don't buy music. I just use Spotify, you know. And that, and like there's such a big culture now of not buying music and art in general that people don't know how to value it. And people always find a way to undercut artists by, you know, saying stuff like, oh, I can just get it from someone else. I can just commission it cheaper. Like,
yeah, what's the difference, bro?
Yeah. I really don't get it. It's like you approach someone because you want their specific style.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, but I can get it cheaper from someone. Yeah, but they're not gonna do it like me, right? It's like one time someone approached me to ask a song to write a song for them. And they were like, oh, bro, is this gonna be like a 500 ringgit? And I'm like, that's not enough. Can I get like 800 or something? Like, oh, but I have someone who can do it for 400. Then you go and get him lah, fucker. Like, you know.
It's not like getting, on one side of the road I can get nasi lemak for like 5 ringgit, but on the other side I can get it for 2 ringgit. Like,
exactly. Like, it's different.
Yeah, it's your own personal creation. It's a part of you. I think that's why pricing is hard too, because it's not like food, it's like an object. Because like the thing you create is very literally a part of yourself. So it's like putting a price on yourself. So I guess people would see that as like, oh, you think you're worth that much.
You think you're worth like this much, bro?
Yeah, and then like, personally you're sort of like, oh, you know, I don't want to be self-indulgent, but also
you want to value your work and you want to eat, right?
You want to eat too. That would be kind of nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, you brought up something about it being a part of you, and I mean, whenever I see something of yours, I'm like, yeah, that's Natasha. Or like whenever I hear something that Harish writes, who is currently in the studio with us right now, I'll be interviewing him later. But whenever I see something that a Harish writes, I'm like, yeah, dude, that's him, you know, like. And something about artists is that they have such a recognizable voice or style. And I mean, like, what was the journey like for you in refining that, and how long did it take until you got to a point where it's like, yeah, I think this is representative of me?
Funny you should ask that, because I still don't know. But that's also like what we said about pricing. It's like a never-ending journey. Like, what is your art style? Because like even once you find it, then you'll change as a person, and you'll be like, oh, that's not me anymore, you know. And I'm sure it'll be the same with, you know, music. Like there's always like, you know, there's always a thing of like, you know, a band that you liked in your childhood, they you know, oh, they're a rip-off now because they sound so different, so mainstream. Like maybe it's just people changing, you know. So for me, in terms of art style, I'm still figuring it out. But you know, like you and like other people have said, oh, you know, when I see your stuff, it looks like your thing. But for me, I guess like especially when I was a teenager, like sort of knowing like, oh, art is like a thing about me that I like what I did was like I surrounded myself with other things that felt me. So, you know, it's hard to see the stuff you create and be like, oh, is that me? But it was easier to look at other stuff people had created, like songs and like music and movies and art and stuff, and be like, oh, that's totally me. So sort of like I used to like have like folders on my laptop, like where I just like save photos, or like, oh, that's super me, and then that would be like inspiration folder, or like playlist, or like, oh, this is super me in this specific mood. And then that sort of helped me sort of, you know, refine like, you know, oh, this style or like this emotion that I have that is very me that I want to project. So yeah, it's still a journey, but it helps.
So I was talking to a couple of the poets yesterday, Sheena, Baharuddin, and Akil. Those episodes will be airing soon, or they probably would have already aired by the time this comes out. But we were like talking about, you know, like reflecting on some of your old work, and I think a very common theme is that people will like look back and it'll be like, who the fuck is this? You know, it's like sometimes you look back at, let's say in my case, songs that I wrote a while back, or for them like poems that they wrote during very different times. Like it could be something like 6 months ago, or even like 2 or 3 years ago, and like there's such a big change that you don't notice. Like, I mean, in your case, do you ever look back at like old stuff that you've done and just been like, man, is this really me? Like, or do you kind of like look at it like, damn, I used to be really, I wouldn't say immature, but I was a really different person back then, like different experiences, different influences. Like, do you ever look at old pieces and just go like, wow, I was really different back then?
Oh yeah, totally, all the time. Even like even in the space of like a few months, if I look at something, I'm like, wow, I was like really like, you know, insert adjective here, like wow, you know. But yeah, like I think for me, like I know a lot of artists, they look at their old stuff and maybe feel like resentment or embarrassment, but for me, I think it's kind of fascinating, like, you know, like, oh, that was a different person and she made this, and it's like reflective of my journey. Well, but yeah, I think also it's like, even if something doesn't really feel me, it's worth to hang on to, because like I had to be that before I got here, you know. Yeah, like for me, like when I started drawing a lot was like sort of early teenhood, teenagehood, you know. So like I was like super like, you know, nerdy, because all my friends are like that at the time, like, you know, super into anime and like, you know, Minecraft, you know, it was like 2011, okay. And like and you know, that was like, oh, you know, that got me into really like, you know, like fantasy art and things like that. And then when I went to high school, like my mental health kind of, you know, so then my art became super different and like really defined how I draw stuff now. Like it was super like emo, stressy, depressy, but like I feel like now, like as an adult, I'm able to take both those phases in life and sort of combine into something that's more mature, more me, like, you know, those were me. Like I'm like, sort of the stuff I create now is like a reflection of like a person who used to be that and grew, you know, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even though I've grown a lot as a musician, and I think this is the same for any artist, it's like there'll always be this like set of core influences that you can never truly escape. Like for me, I don't listen to Dream Theater much anymore, like but John Petrucci, like his style is still ingrained in my head. Metallica, like even though I listen to, let's say, Pliny, Revocation, Gojira, Opeth, and like all these bands, like and they do influence me now. There's still something like from like that like 15-year-old kid in his room playing guitar, like learning Metallica riffs and learning John Petrucci solos, like that still sticks with me. And I don't notice it that much until people point it out, you know. And does that happen to you as well? It's like do people see patterns in your work that you don't see because, you know, maybe like you're subconsciously blocking it out or something?
Oh, I think so. Like, just to quickly add on to what you said about like, because yeah, when I listened to your music, like, because I knew that, you know, Dream Theater meant a lot to you, or means a lot, or but you know, you telling me that it's like not as much of an influence as it was before, but I still, like, when I hear your stuff, first of all, it sounds super Tristan-y to me, and like I kind of hear the Dream Theater-y stuff, but it's like, you know what I mean, it's become my own thing. Yeah, it's your thing, and like it wouldn't have gotten there without the Dream Theater-y stuff. And in terms of people recognizing patterns in my work, and it's always the shit I don't recognize. Like, I remember at one point, I can't remember what conversation it was, you asked me something about like, oh, you always draw the people with the eyelashes, which I actually, in the grand scheme of my art, I don't do a lot. Just like very occasionally, just one time, and I was like, oh, I want to draw me, but like prettier. So, but then like that's what you notice, and that's what you define as me. And like when I was in high school, like a lot of people would tell me my art. They thought that when they saw my art before they saw me, they'd be like, oh, I thought a guy drew this, which I thought was really interesting. But now, like, gender identity is something I'm like sort of beginning to branch into, and I'm like thinking about all those people who are like, oh, your art is super masculine and stuff, and like I wouldn't have like I mean, it's not to say that I wouldn't have branched into what I am now without people pointing it out, but it's just like interesting, you know, that's what I'm not known for, but that it's like that it's significant for other people, that's a thing, you know. So yeah,
I mean, I remember one time someone like pointed like, look, you sound like band X, and I'm like, what the fuck is that band? And I checked it out, I'm like, oh my god, I fucking love it, bro. Like, oh my god, yeah. So I mean, just to go back to like to that finding your own voice thing, like like, do you have any people that you really look up to, like any artists, like they could be dead or they could be modern artists, like is there anyone that you really look up to, that you see as inspiration? Could be contemporary, could be dead.
This is the part where like when someone asks what's your favorite movie and you're like, I've watched movies. Funnily enough, like my influences that like really had an impact on me are like not art people. Like one huge one for me is a book. So it's by Virginia Woolf. It's called Orlando. It's like my favorite book of all time. I see Mohan nodding. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, spoiler alert, shut the podcast off for like 5 minutes if you don't want to know. But basically, spoiler alert, it's about... It's like, well, spoiler alert, but it's also one of those books that you can write a blurb to. It's essentially like this guy who halfway through the book turns into a woman and lives 300 years. And it's like a not a plot you can summarize, but it's basically about... It was written by Virginia Woolf for her, like her girlfriend essentially, and about her life, celebrating her life, and also celebrating like fluidity, gender fluidity, personal growth. And like I said, because gender identity is like something I'm thinking a lot about and stuff, it, yeah, sort of like I guess like, now I forgot what the question was. But wait, I've remembered it. So it's like, because to me, like the book is like a huge influence on art, because like if I saw somebody's art, I would just say like, oh, that's that person's art. But because that book to me is like, what's impacting it for me is like when I read it, the visuals that I see in my head, that nobody else could have told me that. But I'm sure you probably get the same, like your music and like what the things that have an impact on you are like the things that create a lot of your own personal thoughts and emotions out of. So yes,
let's just talk about that like a little bit more. So like the imagery that's invoked in your head when you read something is an influence to you. I find that fucking cool, because that's just like someone who just writes words on paper and you just put that in your head and you just come up with your own image. I think that's really, really cool. That is really...
I'm sure you probably have the same for, like, sounds.
Like a lot of my inspiration, like aside from like my big four bands or whatever, like comes from a lot of weird places. It's like I'll be walking down the street and then some like guy will honk his horn, and then like because he's going fast, it's like the pitch will change. I'm like, oh, that sounded pretty cool. Or like I'll be watching a movie like I mentioned yesterday with Sheena, like The Thing, with John Carpenter. That fucking soundtrack is amazing.
It is.
Yeah, like I mean, just like that alone is a really... It's different, and it's cool just to break out of that musician mindset where you've got to get inspiration from music. Like I went to the art gallery and I was like, yo, this is really cool. Like I saw some pieces that I don't know if it translated into anything, but I was like, it got the creative juices in my brain.
Yeah, it's the stuff that sparks something personal in you, like a personal creativity in you, not the thing itself. Yeah. Because I feel like when I look at other people doing their thing, like when I see like a finished product, it inspires me just to start creating as well. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, so it's like sometimes you look at musicians who are shredding, it's like, oh fuck me, I can never play this fast, I fucking give up. Like I watch, I don't know, Brandon Ellis play guitar and I'm like, fucking hell, dude, I shouldn't even be playing metal. But yeah, so like early on you were talking about making arts viable or as like a sustainable source of income. Do you really see that as okay, be completely honest, like do you ever see yourself being a full-time artist in Malaysia?
In Malaysia, no. Like that's it. No. Because as I said, good old nepotism, I got into that showing because of my dad. So he also organizes other art events, and usually for each of them is sort of roughly the same gang of artists who are friends or close to my dad, who are like, hey, I'll come over. And like there's like a huge, like I'm able to see the difference between those that have a full-time career and do art and those who do art. And in Malaysia, like maybe it's just this group of people, but like a lot of the ones who live comfortably are the ones with like full-time jobs. They have like a business, or like they're like a lawyer or something like that, and they do art on the side, or they like worked and then they retired and then they were like, oh, I'll get into art. And then there's a couple who are like, there's a lot of these artists who are like, they're like the portrait painters on Bukit Bintang that you see in like Pasar Seni and stuff. There's a couple who do this full-time, and also they're insanely talented. They're like masters at what they do. I could never reach their level. I wouldn't call their lives comfortable. Like it's living in a flat that's like the size of like a room in an apartment in KL, you know, with like, you know, your whole family, 5 people crammed in there, and then, you know, you've got no money for like medical bills, let alone like paint, you know.
Yeah.
So like I've seen like a couple, there's like artists who are like Malaysian artists who are like famous, like I'm thinking of one called Latif Mohidin, because I went to his show and I met him. He was cool. So he is pretty prominent in like the Southeast Asian art scene, but I'd argue he only got successful like he sort of made, like he went to Germany to study, and that's really where he made it, and then he came back and, you know, oh, you know, he's Malaysian, he traveled around and all that, because, you know, where in Malaysia would you get a platform to really boost yourself to that level?
I don't think that there's much infrastructure for art in general.
Yeah,
like even
exactly.
something that's meant to be super palatable, like music. Like I understand, like not a lot of people can appreciate different forms of art, but something like music, stuff that's really chill, there isn't a lot of support for it. Like the community is fucking small, so I can't imagine being like an interpretive dancer in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Like something that niche is just impossible to survive and kind of make like a, you know, like have it be your full-time job. But I guess like a follow-up question that I do want to ask is, do you think that if you were to do this full-time, like let's say you could survive comfortably with it, do you think that doing it will take away like the enjoyment and I guess like the passion for it? Because it's a job now, like you have to do art to survive, you know. It's like right now you and I do art in our own free time, and it can kind of feel like an escape, but then it's like an escape from work, but then if you make that work you can't escape, right? So yeah, I mean, do you feel like you would be less inspired, like some of your creativity will be, you know, blocked off or anything like that?
Yes, I mean, like maybe it's like hard to say because I don't really have an example of someone who even does this full time. I'd say yeah, only based on like stories I've heard other people do. Like I'm sure like in the music industry there's probably like, if I'm thinking of like huge pop stars, you know, like Billboard 100 kind of people, I'm sure they got to a point where like, oh, you know, it's just a job, you know, I'm just doing, you know, making appearances and stuff. And for art, like, because it's really hard to do art independently and make it. Like usually, you know, if you really want to make money, you sort of have to get a creative job like graphic design or like like one thing I actually really wanted to be when I was younger, don't anymore, is a comic artist. Like I wanted to write my own stories and stuff, which first of all is so hard to get off the ground. So like people usually like work for like DC or like Vertigo, like, you know, draw other people's comics, but it's like very production line. And like I like looked into like some of the stories of people who work, and like that's what they wanted to do. They love comics, they love drawing, but it's like 18-hour days at the desk, and you're just pumping out like the same shit over and over again. You don't see the end product, and it's not even yours. So like that's possible, you know, to like do art as a living and just have it sap all of the passion out of you.
I think specifically like if you have to make it so that you make money from it, you aren't doing it for yourself anymore, and then you have to alter the way that you draw for the people that you sell to. Like selling out in music, it's like, oh, you went mainstream. I mean, sometimes I do kind of get it because you want to eat, but then again I'm like, you know, you should still be able to express yourself. You shouldn't change your whole identity just to live off it. So I think that right now, like even though I mean I haven't graduated yet, but I'm dreading the concept of a full-time job. Rightfully so. I have a full-time job. I mean, if I still have energy when I come back from work, I think that it would be good to have that music on the side, because it's somewhere that I can delve into and escape from everything else around me, compared to, you know, wake up, mix, wake up, record, wake up, master, or, you know, do stuff like that. Like it doesn't sound that fun to me. So yeah, I mean that's just something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I don't know how full-time musicians do it, because I mean even if you're a full-time musician, like work is never constant, you know, like you don't have a commission every week, you don't have like a session job, so like I can't imagine like rationing out the money and praying that someone like gives you an order and then you can eat for like the next 2 weeks or something. Like Yeah.
It all comes down to capitalism. We should just
we should just fucking
abolish
like destroy
capitalism.
everything. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess since we're like talking about, you know, making stuff, like when we went to that art gallery, you pointed out this one artist who takes fucking forever to finish his paintings, right? And it's like he's been refining his stuff since 2005, and it's like, no, it's not done. It's not done. Do you struggle with that? Like, is there like this perfectionist part in you where it's like, no, it's gotta be perfect, and there's like all these small little blemishes and details that you want to iron out that probably other people don't notice?
So first of all, shout out to that guy, because he actually mentored me art. So he taught me, like, because I'm not trained professionally, I didn't go to art school or anything. So I used to go to his house and he would teach me just how to fucking draw. He'd like put a shoe there and be like, draw it, and then he'd tell me like, this line isn't expressive enough. So shout out to him. His name is 𝐕𝐸𝐸𝐸 Serono, but I call him Pak Dodo. So yeah, check out his stuff wherever that may be available on the internet.
Instagram, I think, yeah.
I'm not sure. He's like 83, so I don't think he has an Instagram. But yeah, I kind of have, because that's a problem for like fine artists, because like, you know, if you draw like abstract where you're like splashing paint on a canvas, you're like, at what point is it done? So yeah, but I guess for me it's like I sort of plan my pieces out first, because I do more like illustration. So like I'm always like, oh, I draw stuff in my sketchbook, and then I'm like, which one should I turn into a piece?
Right.
And then it comes back to like a piece that I could sell, you know, or a piece that I can post on Instagram. Because like if, you know, money wasn't an issue, or like pleasing people wasn't an issue, I would just like draw in my sketchbook, and like I wouldn't have to like make like a piece of paper and then frame it like and be like, oh, that's the final piece, you know, that's part of my portfolio. So yeah, I definitely like, it's like at what point, like at which, like when you express yourself, you make such a myriad of different shit, you know, like sketches and all that. And with you, I'm sure music, riffs and stuff. At what point and even why should you like carve out, oh, this is like a finished thingy that I'm gonna show people? So yeah, that's always a struggle of like, where does your art start and finish?
Where you stop.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. For me, like, ever since I've released my EP, I feel like every song that I write isn't just a song on its own, and I don't like that, because I'm like, oh, this would be a good opener, and I need to stop thinking like that, because like I should just write and then find a way to go and fit it together later, you know, like I shouldn't be thinking about concepts and all that, because then I limit myself.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
And I think in your case, it's like when you like start drawing and you have like a good idea, it's like, oh, this would be good for Instagram, you know, like why not just finish drawing it first? And it's like, I feel that there's always this voice in the back of your head that's like telling you like, you've got to sell this, you've got to put it here, you've got to get validated. And I don't like that really. Like I've been kind of training myself to kind of forget about that, you know. But yeah, I mean, like we can talk a little bit about your workflow. Like personally, like back then I used to write songs really fast, but now I mean, I've been stressed out with all this radio work and you know, studies and stuff. So it's like I've been taking my own sweet time with it. How long does it take you to, you know, fully develop an idea or like a sketch or something into something close to a final product?
The short answer is like years, because I usually don't like sit down and be like, I guess not. Well, I was going to compare it to music, but I can't speak for that. But I guess it's more like, because, you know, we work with like sketchbooks first, so, or at least I do. So the way I develop an idea isn't like sitting down and being like, okay, this is going to be a project and this is going to be what it's about, and I'm going to like produce some drafts. So it's more like I usually look through the stuff I've drawn in the past and sort of see patterns in there, and if I'm like, oh, this thing is pretty cool that I drew when I was like 17, when I was feeling this way, and I think it would look good with this thing that I drew last week, you know. Yeah, so like my final ideas sort of come from like the culmination of everything I've ever done, rather than sitting down and being like, okay, let's make a project, you know. So yeah, that's how long it takes for me. What about you for music? Like, is it just a culmination of like stuff you've done in the past and things?
So I mean, for my EP, it's like I wrote something like 10 songs, and then I was just like, oh wait, 4 of these fit really well together. Like the initial drafts of the EP were really weird, and then I managed to narrow it down into something that was cohesive, you know. And I don't know, it's lately I've been noodling a lot. You know, I've just been like, I've just been like doing nothing. I've just been plugging in my guitar and just being like,
is that noodling?
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes I like get a really good idea about it, but then sometimes I have to sit down and say, okay, focus and try and write something new. It's like I sit down for like 10-15 minutes and I just try to stop playing stuff that I already know, or stop going back to old habits and, you know, like trying out new notes and stuff, and that kind of forces me to come up with something. And normally whenever I do force myself to do that, I come up with something cool. Whether I use it or not depends, but I don't know, like, do a lot of your ideas just come from doodles and noodles, or, you know?
Visual noodling. Yeah, entirely. Like, because that's like when, if I had to, like, I've never done this just because it sounds unappealing. If I had to sit down and be like, no noodling, let's make something final that people will like and buy, you know, then it would like never be authentic, and I would never like be happy with myself. So it's entirely from like visual noodling, just so I like that's the catchphrase for the day, noodling. Like just sort of taking stuff I've done in the past when I was really emotional, and like when I'm on a day where I'm like really rational and thinking like business head, like let's put something cohesive together. Like, you know, then I can afford to take something that's really uncohesive when I was like really emotional and then make it into something. So you refine it a little bit and you just kind of exactly. So I was talking to two poets again yesterday, and it's like sometimes they're just like in like they're just inspired, like let's say something traumatic happened or something eye-opening happened. It's like, damn, I really want to write about this, and they just, you know, they just fucking write. Does that happen to you? Like, is there any time where it's like, oh my god, I need to draw something just popped in my head, and it's like 100%. Like, I think because that's the point of art for me, to get what I'm feeling out on paper. Like, never would I draw something if I didn't feel it. So like everything I produce is like, oh, there's like a specific mood. Like, I'm like, oh, super stressy, depressy today. I gotta like get it out. And like me at 3 a.m. crying, like sketching something. So that's because that's really the only reason I draw, you know, to get my emotions out of my body, I guess, out of my mind, and just express myself. So yeah, like I can totally relate to the two poets. Like, you know, when something happens and you're like, oh, I gotta make art. I would never make art if I wasn't feeling anything, just because it wouldn't be art for me. It would just be forcing yourself to do it, right? So everything I've ever made is because I feel something. Is that the same for you? Yeah, I mean, I also find it really endearing when you look back at those old pieces. Like, I look back at my EP, I'm like, damn, I could have done so much more. But then again, I kind of treat it as like a time capsule. So I mean, that's something that I like to look back on. It's like, even though it's not the best that I could have done, like now I'm a much better guitarist than I was, let's say, 2 weeks ago or a month ago or 2 years ago. Like, just look back on it and be like, I've grown since then. Because I mean, it kind of like reminds you of what you were feeling at that point. Like, each song in that EP was like from a very specific time. I'm like, this was after a breakup, man. Like, you know, like this was baby Tristan. This was like after I finished MPU and I felt great. And I mean, that's why, like, whenever I have something, I don't hesitate to release it, thinking if it's good enough or not, because I just want to get it out there, and hopefully someday when I listen back to it, it'll give me good memories again. It's just the equivalent of talking about your feelings, like putting it on a platform. Like, otherwise it wouldn't be art. It wouldn't really be music. It would just be like a jingle, you know, like 4 jingles that you pay for. Well, I mean, that's about everything that I've been thinking about for like expression lately. You know, it's like I've just been thinking about how I shouldn't really care about what it will sound like later on when I get better, because totally I will get better regardless. You know, I'll mature as an artist. But I mean, I don't know, like is there anything that you've noticed about the way that you look at yourself in the past? Like are you overly critical of like, why didn't you draw this eyelash better, or why didn't you do this better? Like, good lord. That's a very big question. Honestly, I wish I could say, yeah, you know, criticize myself and, you know, I wish I could be better. But honestly, I like really, maybe this is really self-indulgent of me, but like, especially artistically, like, I really like the stuff I've created, especially when I was most emotional, because I think it's cool. And
That's
I think
good.
thanks.
Good.
Because I think it's really authentic and like, there's like, I have like one sketchbook when like life was like not that great when I was like 14, and like I hold it in such high esteem. Like it was like a extremely creative period of my life. So like everything I try to do, I try to emulate, not that, but try to emulate how authentic I was then. So I guess, yeah, instead I'm lucky in that, you know, that I tend to look at the positives of like things from the past, you know, oh, you know, then I was really sad, but I was really authentic, or like in this point I was really happy, and you know, like I was feeling really great and I want to emulate that again, you know. So I guess artistically, I'm lucky that I view myself that way, that, you know, and I guess that's also like tied to things we've talked about before, like, you know, growth and like having different influences and changing and things, like all of it is like really, really valuable. So because since art is a part of yourself, it's such a valuable tool to look at your past art as like, you know, as a lesson for self-growth, you know, like I was there once, where can I go now? So yeah, that's how I view myself. That's how I like to view the past, at least as, artistically, emotionally, like what can I learn and how far have I gotten now and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, how do you view your past self?
Well, it used to be very toxic, like, damn bro, you were so shit at guitar back then, like, bro,
Aww.
like, I mean, like it would come after like performances mostly. It's like you would focus on one note that you messed up and you would beat yourself up over it. Like it was not a good thing. And I think like over time, like I realized that people didn't really hear those mistakes, or people didn't really notice it. It's only you, because again, you are your own biggest critic. It's like there was some really like fucked up things that I did on stage, like I missed a note, like in my head I was like blowing it out of proportion. And even on my EP, like there were quite a bit of mixing mistakes, things that I should have done better, and I was like, oh, everyone's gonna notice it, everyone's gonna say I'm a fucking fraud and I'm a poser. But then I was like, nice EP, bro, you know. It's like
to me, as someone hearing your EP and your stuff, like it all sounds deliberate. Like this whole thing is Tristan, not like, oh, that one note is imperfect, you know, out of time or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I realized that even if you hear like mistakes in recordings, there is something endearing about it. I forgot if it was a Green Day song, or okay, I'm coming out as a fucking fraud again, but like there was this one song where it was an acoustic guitar intro, and like there were like two mistakes in the beginning, and he kept repeating it, and he was like, fuck. Like he screamed fuck like after he fucked up twice, and then like the third time on that take it went through. I think it was Green Day, and they left that in. I found it really endearing. Like seeing something about your idols fuck up, you know, it's just like, you know that they're human. John Petrucci is God. Michael Ackerfeld is God. And all these different guitarists like Dave Davidson. And you know, like you just look at them fuck up in these videos, like, oh, I messed up this take. It's like, it feels very endearing. So that's something that I've been working on a lot, like realizing that even though I hold these people up to like a really, really what's the word? Like I really hold them highly in my head. I just realized that they're just like me. They fuck up. Like even though they're much better than me, I'm not very good. And, like they fuck up a lot. And I think to be honest, your answer was one of the most positive ones that I've got, because a lot of people really beat themselves up about what they've done in the past. Like they'll look back and they say, oh, this is really, you know, immature. But I think everyone kind of grew out of that behavior, luckily. So yeah, I mean, if there are any listeners here watching who are artists, you know, don't
beat yourself up.
Don't cringe too much. Don't beat yourself up. Everyone makes mistakes. It's better, like in my case, if you're a musician, just release shit, learn from it, and move on. Don't dread over that first release too much. It's scary to release stuff, especially when you're putting it on like a public platform, but just put it out, and once that's over, you get the experience and you learn from it. People will be like, yo, maybe you should have made the base louder here. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
and then I'll just go and take note of it. Or maybe you should have, colored this a little bit differently. Like, where's the shading on this, bro? And it's like, oh yeah, maybe I should shade more.
Yeah.
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 I think that's about everything that I have on my mind right now. Like, is there anything you want to talk about?
You're valid and I love you.
Oh my god.
What?
Same.
Be loving.
Likewise, you are an amazing artist. I really
keep
look up to
doing what you do. Oh wait, are we talking to the listener or me?
Everyone.
Oh, okay. I was talking to the listener. But, oh, thank you. Thank you. I really respect you as an artist too. Super authentic. Keep doing what you do, Tristan.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there anything you want to plug? Your Instagram where commissions are open.
You can find me Rakodama. So that's RAKODAMA, Rakodama, Instagram. I have a YouTube, but it's embarrassing. Don't look at that. And check out Tristan. His music is T2TITOU on Bandcamp, Spotify. It's really great.
I've plugged that enough already. People probably have that like seared into their brain. It's like I've scarred them mentally. Any upcoming showings? Any anything like that, or nothing planned for now?
Commissions are open.
Yeah, commissions are open. If you need cool watercolor stuff.
Yeah, I'd appreciate.
Well, if that's it, I think we can end it here. Thank you for coming again, Natasha.
Thanks for having me. Lots of fun.
Yeah.